broker, real estate investor, also co-founder of Keyrenter Property Management. For the past decade, my team has been helping real estate investors, landlords, government agencies find greater success through proven acquisition, leasing, and management strategies. We decided to franchise the company about 3 years ago. We sold our first franchise last January. And today we have 15 locations, 15 offices in 6 different states. So let's get into this. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. If you set your goals ridiculously high and it's a failure, you will fail above everyone's success. So I want to tell you a story. We have a client whose name is Maria. Her and her husband moved to the States from Europe in the early 70s. Barely speaking any English, he got a job as a postal worker. And he knew early on that his income and his pension, his retirement through the postal service was not going to amount to a lot. It wouldn't provide the sort of life and retirement that they wanted to have. So he started learning. He started educating himself, and he discovered real estate. He discovered rentals. And over time, he started buying. And he was in a unique situation, opportunity, where he could get to know people through delivering their mail, and he could see some of the things that they were receiving, notices of default, or bank letters, things like that. He started getting to know people a little bit more. And slowly, they started buying these rentals. She was a little apprehensive and a little scared. It was a lot of work. They put all of their money into these rentals. All of their cash flow that they had on the rentals, they put towards the principal of their loans. So fast forward nearly 40 years, and our client Maria, her husband has since passed away. Their properties, they've had about 30 homes, all paid off, and she now has a life. And her children and her grandchildren, they have a life that they couldn't have dreamed of if he would have stayed and if he would have taken the easy way, which was working the day job, getting his paycheck, living off a very meager pension through retirement. They took the road less traveled. You know, Matt Atkinson sent out an email yesterday, and he sent out a video where he talked about the importance of leaving a legacy. What type of legacy do we all want to leave for our children, for our posterity? That's why we're here today. And I know that all of us have these goals. Some of us have hit many goals. And you know, that's what we are doing here. We're taking the road less traveled. So I want to ask a question. By the show of hands, how many of you have hired out or are currently hiring out a property management company to manage your rentals? Okay, very good. And how many of you are currently self-managing rentals? Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to share with you today are some strategies. I'm not here to sell you on Keyrenter. I'm not here to sell you or try to convince you that you should hire a property management company. My objective today, in the few minutes that I have, is to help us identify certain questions that every investor should be asking themselves about their management strategy. Every situation in your individual plan, your individual goals vary. And we're going to be going through some questions. So fact, and I'm always a little leery when the presenter puts up something like this on the slides of what's going to come next, right? But bear with me. Your property and tenants need a good and effective property manager. How many of you believe that? Okay. The property manager that I'm referring here is not necessarily a management company. If you manage yourself, you are the property manager. Do you need to be good and effective? to your list, if you manage it on your own, or you hire a company, you gotta be good, you gotta be effective. Your tenants deserve that, okay? Your property deserves that. You're putting a lot of money into this. Let's do it right. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're deciding between do-it-yourself management or hiring out a property management company. Questions that you should be asking yourself. Some of those are, how involved do you want or need to be? Can you let go of some of the details and allow someone else to manage through authorized fiduciary, where you're basically giving someone the authority to act on your behalf? Some people can't do that, and that's okay. Some people need to really be in the details of what's going on. Others can step away a little bit. And it's going to depend on your growth strategy and how much you can manage on your own. Trust me, if you hire a management company and you try to micromanage and manage the company through, or manage the property through a company, you're going to have challenges. The company's going to say, hey, come on, you hired us, let us do our job here. It's their responsibility to get your trust. And that's what we're going to talk about a little later. Are you okay with replacing time and effort with a fee? Is your time more valuable doing other things than property management activities? Some of you may have careers. Some of you have a lot of other opportunities that you could be spending some of your time and not have to deal with the details, and you can afford to have a third party handle some of that. Did you budget for a property management company? Or excuse me, did you budget for a property manager when you bought? Now that could be yourself or a company. And trust me, if you don't budget for it through the acquisition, something could happen in your life that makes it so you can no longer manage the property on your own. We have a client, his name's Tony. He started buying properties about 20 years ago, managing on his own. About 10 years ago, he hired us to handle his portfolio. And last year, and of course he had been planning to turn it over at some point, and he decided to focus his efforts in other areas. But last year he came down with a massive internal infection, put him in the hospital for 6 months, induced coma, couldn't speak when he came out, had to relearn, and he's still at home, he's functioning at best. But he will never have the life that he had, his level of functionality. He will never be able to manage properties again. And his family, when I got a call from his daughter explaining the situation, how grateful are they that he put them in a position where they could afford it, where the cash flow was sufficient that it wouldn't put the family in a negative cash flow situation, put that undue stress on them. How many doors do you want to own? Can you scale? Are you going to get to a point in your growth that you plateau, that you can no longer be productive through self-management? Do you have the time necessary to manage effectively? Are we so busy in other areas of our life? We have families, we have careers, we have other things going on, where when we get that call from the tenant, or that situation when we're at Disneyland, or whatever it is, we got to step away. Can we effectively manage when we have so much going on in our lives? Unless you take Jack Handy's advice, and as you make your way through this hectic world of ours, set aside a few minutes each day, and at the end of the year, you'll have a few couple days saved up. Wouldn't that be nice, right? But that's not the reality of it. We have finite time. Are you okay with being on call during the day, nights, weekends, holidays, while on vacation, etc.? I know that many of us have experienced that midnight call, or sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner, or my favorite, New Year's Day morning, pipes are frozen, water's flowing all over the place, and you got to try to scramble to find a vendor that can handle that. Are you okay with that? Many of you aren't, that's great. Just a question to be asking yourself. Are you able to stay up to date and informed on best practices, federal and local laws and regulations? How many of you are aware of the new change, significant change, that recently took place with fair housing? It's still being discussed. There's a lot of discussion going on about it. How many of you are aware of that? One hand. Oh, Mr. Landlord. It's pretty significant. It's something you guys should be aware of. It has to do with criminal history and not being able to disqualify solely on arrest and sometimes even criminal history. There's a lot more you have to read into it before offering a denial. Just something to be aware of and look it up after the conference today. Do you have the various skill sets required to be a good and effective property manager? A lot of hats you got to wear: advertising, leasing, maintenance, tenant retention, a lot of things going on. Sometimes it's not for everyone, and that's okay. But you want to find a solution that will work. So what makes a good and effective property manager? And again, regardless, if you're managing on your own or you hire it out, these are things that you need to have or you should be looking for in a third party. We've learned over the years that a continued focus on these 6 key areas results in the best outcomes for our rental properties and for those of our clients. We call these the 6 keys of rental success. Key number 1, low vacancy. The largest expense most landlords face with rental properties is the vacancy time between tenants. Many landlords lose thousands in rent simply because they don't understand some important guidelines to follow in order to avoid excessive vacancy time. So here are some of the things that landlords, property management companies can and should be doing to help avoid excessive vacancy. Market-based rental pricing, keeping the property in good condition, video tours, pre-advertising, advertising the rental, and finding tenants before your tenants move out. That's money. Man, you can kill vacancy. It's great. It's wonderful. Excellent advertising exposure, showing automation, simple application leasing process, making that easy. Having target lease end dates. Here in Utah, you can't. It's really hard to rent between November, January, February. Just don't do that. Don't structure the leases in a way where they expire during those time frames. You'll get a lot more in the peak months. Keep happy tenants. Make paying rent easy. Have an online system where they can do that. There's some very inexpensive ways of doing that. Have awesome support. Be there when they need them. Have appreciation events. Of course, if you're big enough or you manage a lot of units, you can have some of these appreciation events, raffles, things like that. Keep tenants engaged and wanting to rent from you. You want them to rent. You don't want them to say, hey, I've had it. This guy never answers his phone, or this company never answers their phone. I can't get a hold of them. My next opportunity, I'm out of here. Key number 2, low costs and reserves. There are expected and unplanned costs associated with rental properties. There's no way of avoiding that. Budgeting and maintaining reserves. We use the 3 times rule. Having a reserve of 3 times your rental payments. Some investors use 6, others less. We recommend at least 3. For expenses and improvements, along with keeping costs low, looking for low cost, high value, will guide your rentals to success. We have situations sometimes where we get a call from a wife or a spouse that says, hey, what's going on here? You guys replaced the furnace and it cost me $1,500 or $2,000. That was our Christmas money. That was our vacation money. Gosh, you need to plan for things like that. You have a rental here. Things are going to happen. Let's get a reserve in place so that it doesn't create a burden on your family. That's the worst thing. One of the worst mistakes investors or landlords can make is not planning well enough. Things are going to happen. Number 3, reduce risk and liability. So reducing risk and liability is critical to the success of any rental property. The cost for mistakes and situations caused by a lack of systems, processes, and understanding can be very expensive. Here's some things, I'm not going to go through the whole list here, ways that you can help reduce your risk and liability as a landlord, and also the management company that you decide to hire should be doing these as well to make sure that the risk is reduced. Key number 4, okay, think we know this, and we could spend a day just on this topic. Tenant screening, tenant selection. It is the most important thing, okay, in successful property management. 90% of the problems out there are created because landlords or investors, even property management companies, trust me, management companies aren't all created equally, okay? They rush. They're so worried about the vacancy, which is key number one, that they rush to get the tenant in there. And if you fog a mirror, they'll rent to you sometimes. You gotta put time into it. You should be okay with turning away applicants if it saves you time, money, and grief in the long run, okay? That's really important. Focus on the criteria, be consistent with it in your process, especially if you own 4 or more properties. You've got to be consistent with your screening so you don't have fair housing issues, okay? Really important. Key number 5, know your numbers. How many times does Matt Atkinson say, know your numbers? All the time, right? It's so true. Know your numbers. It is especially important with a larger portfolio to track your income and expense like a hawk, okay? If you have 1 or 2, you might get away with just, okay, I got my cash flow, I got, this, you kind of know. But if you got a lot of rentals, the numbers can get lost unless you have a great way of tracking it. Track your progress, make projections, learn financial formulas, cap rates, return on investment, cash on cash returns, there's others. Ways that you can know how you're doing it, how your properties are performing. This is a great place to learn that, coming to these meetings, so kudos to you guys. If you hire a property management company, make sure you understand the monthly financial statements and you review them. And even more importantly, make sure that the company you hire knows these financial formulas. Make sure that they know the numbers. Make sure that they know how your properties are performing. Because if they don't, they're just going to, it doesn't matter, right? They may have expenses come in, they're not really tracking it, they don't really care sometimes, unfortunately, because they're trained to find tenants, collect rent, handle maintenance, but there's so much more than that, okay? Key number 6, be informed. Informed with the property. Are you doing inspections? Are you too busy to do inspections? If you're too busy to go through your properties at least twice a year, then you need to hire it out. If you're too busy to check the condition, inspections have so much more to do with tenant psychology than they actually do with the condition. You want to make sure your tenants know, hey, John's coming through next week. I got to make sure this place is clean. I got to make sure this is fixed, whatever it is, so that at least it gets cleaned twice a year, right? That's important. And if you hire this out, you won't believe how many clients we get from other companies that say, well, I think they did inspections, at least they billed me for it. If you're not getting a report, if you're not getting video or pictures or something so you can view the inside and the outside of the home, see if there's lease violations, other issues, that's a problem, okay? Tenants, know their situation. What are their goals? Are they planning to buy in the future? Are they planning to, and if you're licensed, that could be a great opportunity, right? Licensed agent. What are they going through? What's their financial situation? How are things going for them? Get to know them a little bit. And if you have a management company, because you don't want to, you don't want to tread in the same pool as your tenants, they need to know the tenants. They need to know the situation so that you can plan and work with them. Laws and regulations, we talked about that. Be informed of what's going on through your local apartment association, here are these investor clubs. There's other ways as well. The industry, important to know what's going on in your market. The trends, real estate trends. There's newsletters you can get locally here. It will help you know what vacancy rates are and what areas are hot, what areas are not, what areas are declining. For example, could it help to know that homeownership rate today is in the U.S. is 63.5%, down from 69% in 2004. Could it help you to know that, hey, we have more tenants than we ever have? We have more single-family rentals on the slide. We have more single-family rentals than we have ever had. And the numbers, increasing numbers, the trend is unbelievable, okay? Is that important to know? Can it impact your portfolio and your strategy? Or that the fastest growing demographic segment of those moving from owning to renting are the 50 plus? Could that be important? Or that the second fastest growing segment are renter households with children? Could that have an impact on what type of properties you buy, knowing that there's more 50 plus than any other segment that's moving into rentals? Yes, we have millennials, we have a lot of different groups. These are the fastest growing groups though. So what to look for in a company? A lot of questions. This is where a lot of our clients or a lot of investors get hung up. They're not sure what to look for. And trust me guys, they're not created equally. Companies differ, their skill sets, their ability to communicate, a lot of different things. But here's some sample questions that if I were looking for a company, I would interview the company or the companies that I'm looking at, just like I'm interviewing an employee, someone who's coming on board. Because the strategic partner that you have as a property manager will make or break the success of your rentals, okay? You make the wrong decision, it's gonna take a lot of time, especially if you have a big portfolio, to transition that away. Just like you screen a tenant. Let's take some time here. So ask them questions. Experience, how many years have you been a property manager? Do you own rentals? Okay guys, do they own rentals themselves? Do they know what pain that they could experience when their heater goes out or they have a month of vacancy? They don't know what that's like. They're not gonna, it's not gonna be as big of a deal. Hey, it's just been vacant 3 months. Come on, it's not a big deal. Are you a member of NARPM? If you haven't heard of NARPM, it is the Association for Residential Property Managers. It stands for National Association of Residential Property Managers. They need to be a member because that's where they can be further trained and refined as a management company. Oh. What systems do you have in place that allow you to do your job effectively and efficiently? What aspects of property management do you find particularly rewarding or challenging? Do they understand concepts like, you know, they're not going to have necessarily the 6 keys of rental success, but they understand those concepts. They should. What are your office hours? As it comes to availability and communication, one of the biggest reasons investors and landlords leave companies and transition to others, and sometimes they like management company hop. You see them like, I'm going here, no, I'm going here. And they transition. But one of the biggest complaints is, yeah, I sent an email or I called my property manager a week ago and I haven't heard back. That's a problem. So what are their office hours? What is your availability after hours? What arrangements do you have to place to handle emergencies? How quickly do you return phone calls and emails? What types of regular communication can I expect to receive from you? And you can ask for their clients. Hey, let me get 2 or 3 clients of yours, and I want to call them and ask them some of these questions about you. Practical skills. How do you go about pricing rentals? What's your vacancy rate? Average days on market. And if you ask them that question, they go like this, well, I think, let's see, we got one. You know, if they don't know this, they don't know what their vacancy rate is, average days on market, that's kind of a challenge. That's a problem, okay? What do you do to reduce my vacancy costs? Will you lease during the last 60 days of tenancy? There's a lot of management companies, because you guys, you probably do this as you're putting it out for rent during the last 30, 60 days of your tenancy. It's not the easiest thing. You gotta coordinate with the tenant for showing and stuff like that. So a lot of companies just say, you know what, we wait till they move out, and then we advertise, and then we turn them, we advertise. that could cost you 30 to 45, depending on the market, 60 days vacancy. Critical. Are they doing this? If they're not, look somewhere else. Work in the Keyrenter. What vendors do you use for maintenance and other projects? How long have you worked with each of them? Handling difficult situations. These are some interesting questions. Tell me about a time when you've had to deal with a disruptive tenant. What steps did you take to remedy the situation? Be interesting what you get back. Tell me about a time where there was a serious maintenance emergency requiring involvement or insurance involvement. What steps did you take to remedy the situation? And again, if they look at you with like deer in headlights, they don't know how to answer that question because maybe they've never experienced it. Look no further, okay? Or excuse me, keep looking, but not with them. What percentage of past tenants have you had to evict? What does the eviction process work, or how does the eviction process work in this state? They need to know the process. Even though they hire it out to an attorney most likely, they need to know the process so that they're educated. And what legal services do you employ? They need to have an attorney on retainer at least, if not in-house, that's handling evictions, or that they can go to the resource if they have legal questions. And again, you could and you should as well. You've got Jeff, there's other attorneys too that can help out with some of those questions. So, in summary, your specific situation differs from your peers, some of your mentors, other people out there who are doing this. These are things that you can ask yourself. And when the time comes, if it is in your strategy, in your plan, hey, I want to get to 10 rentals, I want to get to 20 rentals, whatever it is, and at that point I'm going to hire this out. I hope that this has helped to at least understand what to look for and some of the questions you should be asking yourselves.